Let's start with an LCA defensive back or an athlete that looks like he is getting a lot of love right now on the circuit is Juwan Johnson. What do you know about him? Where does LSU stand? And a little bit more on Trev on how he has really opened the door, it feels like, to a small Lafayette school and made it a feeding ground for big time college football teams.
Yeah, so Juwan has been LCA's starting quarterback. He's the engineer of that offense. Of course, he's a smaller kid. He's about 5'11" right now, going into his junior season at LCA. His recruitment wasn't taken off at quarterback. He's not, he's a fantastic athlete that, he might be the best athlete on LCA, which is why he plays quarterback for him. But this spring, coaches, said if you want to get recruited, why don't you give athlete a try, play some receiver, play some DB, and he started working with a DB trainer in the Baton Rouge area, and he went up to Nebraska, clocked a 4.5 240, landed an offer from an old friend, Mickey Joseph, and then watching him work out for Coach Steeples on Sunday, man, looks like he's been playing DB a lot longer than the last couple of weeks. He's real natural, he's real explosive, he accelerates out of his breaks pretty seamlessly, and he really has no idea what he's doing yet. He doesn't know the ins and outs of playing DB. He's just a fantastic athlete that's quickly taken to the position. Nebraska offered, and then Mississippi State offered, and within 24 hours, Coach Steeples called and got an offer to Johnson. And I already have an On3 recruiting prediction machine pick in for him, given LSU's success recruiting LCA. And you talked about it with Trev Falk. He's given these kids such an opportunity, such a platform. He's put together a little old school that just had a lot of talent and was competing for championships, and now it's almost a powerhouse in the Acadiana area. You can't go through that area without stopping to St. Thomas More and Acadiana and LCA. If you're a college coach or you're someone like myself who's going to look for the top talent, Trev has given an opportunity for these kids to not only get recruited but compete for championships. If you know Trev like I do, and he develops these kids into men, and he's doing a phenomenal job out there. He's an ambassador for LSU, for the NFL, and then for high school football in Louisiana. He's doing a fantastic job at LCA.
Sammy, we talked about this time of the recruiting calendar, how influential it is to building college football rosters, team rosters. You were at LSU on Sunday with the skills challenge and the skills camp. What does this mean to a new staff like Brian Kelly to be able to put their eyeballs and be able to coach these guys for 24 hours like they did over the weekend?
It's a huge opportunity. You're exactly right. And in years past, under Les, under Ed, LSU would accrue 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 commitments over the summertime at camps, because you're finally getting a look at seeing these guys up close, getting to see what they look like from a size standpoint, getting to see what their interests are, which teams are really in it for them. If they're visiting, they obviously have some level of interest that you have to detect. Probably the biggest takeaway from being around LSU on Sunday, and obviously it's a whole different staff, is they have a bunch of assistants on this staff that are probably future head coaches, and a lot of them are former head coaches. But the way Frank Wilson and Cortez Hankton ran camp, and then Brian Kelly came down toward the back end, and kind of reminded me, it's been a while because we've had Ed for the last couple of years at LSU, but Les Miles wasn't around camp for the entire time and kind of come down and be this big figure at the end of camp. And Brian Kelly kind of did the same exact thing. But what stands out is Frank Wilson, Joe Sloan, Cortez Hankton, and the relationships that they have in the state. The emergence of Kerry Cooks and Robert Steeples, who are replacing Corey Raymond, for goodness sake. That's a lofty task. But Coach Steeples is a former high school coach with NFL experience, and he's making a big dent for LSU in recruiting corners. And Kerry Cooks has been on a tear recruiting safeties. I think what you're seeing in this staff is all the strengths of it so far. We have to learn about the coordinators, of course, but from an assistant coach's staff, that Brian Kelly put together. I think he hit a home run with the relationships that these guys have with the high school coaches in the state and the kids in the state. Frank coming over from McNeese, Joe coming over from Louisiana Tech, and Coach Hankton coming over from Georgia, who just won a national championship. It's got a lot of appeal to this staff. There's a lot of new staffs around the country, and LSU has arguably one of the best.
Eliholstein has made a tremendous jump over the last couple of months in his recruitment. He pledged to Alabama a couple of weeks ago. Arch just finished up his official in Athens over the weekend, and I believe will be in Austin coming up here officially on a visit this weekend. What have you heard on the latest on the Louisiana quarterbacks, whether it's Holstein's commitment to Alabama? Why did he pop at this point and what did that mean for Arch's recruitment towards Alabama, and what's the latest on Arch?
Yeah, to start with Holstein, he had been leaning Alabama. I think we spoke about it last time I was on the show, but he's been visiting Alabama 3 times in a 6-week stretch. Basically fell in love with the program and really meshed with Bill O'Brien. And as soon as spring football was done at Zachary, he made it official, committed to Alabama. He's going to head to Tuscaloosa this weekend, but first he's going to throw with Zachary at the LSU 7-on-7 tournament on Friday. And then he'll take his OV to Alabama, and he'll be joined by Arch Manning. Arch is still set to OV Alabama this weekend, and then he'll hit Texas for his 3rd OV next weekend. Alabama remains resolute to recruit both these Louisiana quarterbacks. That's just Nick Saban trying to replenish the depth chart over in Tuscaloosa. And obviously it's a long shot that you're going to get Eliholstein and Arch Manning, 2 of the best quarterbacks from the same state. But if anyone can do it, I wouldn't look past Alabama. And then Ricky Collins will also be on campus Friday. Obviously committed to Purdue, is coming off an OV to Purdue. And he's going to leave from Baton Rouge to go to Florida State on an OV with guys like Shelton Sampson from Baton Rouge Catholic. Going into this summer, it is a wild quarterback puzzle for not only the national landscape, but if you're trying to figure out which direction LSU is going to go in, that's a bit of a mystery as well. Arch, even though he's not officially narrowed things down, he's going to prepare for his 2nd OV to Alabama. I think the OV to Georgia really opened his eyes. It's the first time I've seen him take pictures and it go public like this. Yeah. But you really need to credit Todd Monken and Kirby Smart for the direction that they've recruited him in a very business-like approach, from what I understand. Which, if you're the Mannings, that's exactly what they're seeking. I imagine Alabama will roll out the red carpet as well. But in terms of LSU getting Arch on campus, this is a major deal. He hasn't been on campus like this in 4 years, when he did the same exact thing representing Newman in 7-on-7. At the time, Cooper and his wife Ellen and Archie sat with Ensminger and Ed Orgeron and Mickey Joseph, and it's a whole. It might not even. I think Ensminger was there.
I think Joe Brady sat. I think Joe Brady
might have been the
with
OC
him
at that point. Man, it was a while ago.
Yeah,
but it's a big opportunity for LSU to try to stay afloat with Manning. But right now they have Jaden Rashada on campus for his OV. They're still very much in the thick of it for Dante Moore as his recruitment continues. But Eliholstein, Ricky Collins, and Arch Manning on campus is something to pay attention to, as well as when you look at the Rashada and Dante Moore aspects.
Who handles the quarterback recruiting primarily for LSU? I know that Joe Sloan does a tremendous job in relationship building, but is that where Brian Kelly enters recruiting?
It's Brian Kelly, and it's also Denbrock. And Denbrock has been instrumental in, obviously, Eli Manning committed to Alabama, but LSU probably finished as the number 2 team for Eli before that decision. And that's because of all the ground that Denbrock made up in the last couple of weeks of getting to know him. And, Joe Sloan is certainly leading the charge. He's a young guy with a bunch of energy and fantastic ties to the state of Louisiana. And you see him obviously recruiting Rashada and Moore. He's got connections all over the country at this point, but Denbrock and Kelly are in this as well. And when it comes to quarterbacks, you can't get much bigger than the OC and the head coach, of course.
Sam Spiegelman joining us here talking recruiting. You mentioned that Kerry Cooks was going after safeties, and one of the top safety in the country is out of Westgate and Derek Williams. Where is LSU in his recruitment, and who is heading that up?
Yeah, I would say LSU was early on probably the favorite for Derek. He was recruited by Corey Raymond, who is not only, one of the more esteemed DB coaches in the country, but he's from that part of Louisiana and Acadiana. So LSU is off to a hot start, but, Derek Williams is going to take his time, and he's one of the better players that they've ever seen at Westgate, and he's got the offer sheet and the options to explore. He's visited Alabama quite a bit, and he's expected to be back at Alabama this weekend. He's expected to visit LSU at some point. He's taking an OV to Texas. Michigan is pushing for an OV. Miami is in the mix for an OV. Oklahoma has gotten in the mix here. A&M has gotten in the mix here. Michigan is hanging around. I have a pick in for Alabama. It's not a super confident, high-level pick, but I think at the moment Alabama is probably the favorite for Derek Williams. But there's a long way to go in this recruitment. If you remember, Kayshawn didn't sign early. He took his time. And I think Derek Williams will do a similar blueprint with all the options. And, Westgate obviously expects to compete for a championship again this year, so he's going to take his time with his OVs. He's going to take Texas this summer. He may head to Michigan. He may head to Miami for OVs. But LSU has some power here. They have potential. I think the biggest thing is kind of, I wouldn't say repairing a relationship. It's more of getting to know these new coaches as well as he did with Corey Raymond. Part of the reason why Alabama's in a good spot is Pete Golding is one of the best recruiters in the country, and he's been living in Westgate this spring. And he's got in, Danny Lewis on campus, obviously his new freshman tight end from Westgate, and he's got in Derek Williams to follow a lot of those visits. LSU just kind of has to match that and get him on campus, which will be easy because they're recruiting a ton of their guys this year. They got a great stock of underclassmen as well. And I think LSU certainly has the ability toward the back end of spring. Both Frank Wilson and Joe Sloan was at Westgate. Kerry Cook was at Westgate. They are not forgetting about Derek Williams. They certainly have a very high opinion of him. They had a couple of out-of-state commitments from safeties and Ryan Yates from Denton Guyer. They're still in the mix heavily with Kylan Jackson, but they're not going to slow down on Derek Williams, but I think they have some ground to make up first.
Jeffrey wants to know from Sam Spiegelman, Sammy, what's the latest on Manning High School linebacker Tackett Curtis?
Yeah, Tackett is coming off his official visit to Wisconsin. He's going to head to USC and Ohio State the rest of the month, and according to Tackett, he's going to take things a little bit slower from that point on. Obviously, Manny is going to do the same thing. They're going to gear up for a title run, and Tackett's going to be committed before they do that. Obviously, I feel like he's asking because Tackett made the visit to LSU last month. That was his first visit in a long time, and that's not by accident. This new staff has come on pretty quickly, though, this spring with Tackett and trying to reignite the interest. I know that when Ed was there, they had interest in LSU. I think they thought that Brian Kelly would have picked it up a little bit quicker because Tackett is one of the best in the country, and he's not too far away from LSU. But I think LSU has an opportunity. I think they're going to need to get him on campus, possibly see if he'll take another summer official. He's left July open for other opportunities should they pop up, and I think LSU is kind of that team that has that potential. I really think it comes down to USC or Ohio State. But I can't rule LSU out. They have the opportunity to make a push, but right now he's definitely leaning out of state.
The update, the latest on Shelton Sampson. You mentioned he'll be at Florida State this weekend. Where's his recruitment stand?
I actually upped my confidence level in LSU for Shelton over the weekend. He was quietly back at LSU this weekend. He didn't camp. There's absolutely no reason for him to ever have to camp at a school again until he's getting ready for the NFL Combine in a few years. From what I understand, he's feeling more and more comfortable at LSU. Jordy, if you remember Little Sting, he's more of an introverted personality.
Yeah.
So he doesn't need all the glitz and glamour and the attention. He just kind of wants to feel comfortable. And I think that LSU is moving in the right direction with that, not only with this new coaching staff, but he's getting comfortable with some of the guys on the roster already, including his former teammate Emory Jones from Catholic. He visited with Kylan Jackson quietly over the weekend, and he'll be back, I believe, Friday for the 7-on-7 tournament with Catholic, and he'll head to Florida State and reunite with his old head coach, Gabe Fertitta. And listen, Florida State is in it. Alabama is in it. A&M is in it. He's going to visit Michigan. He's going to visit Oregon. But all along, LSU has been the team to beat. They just needed to stay afloat in this, and I think that from talking to people in and around the program, they're making him feel more comfortable. I feel good. I don't think a decision is anywhere close. He's going to explore all these options. He's going to take all of his visits, and he's going to probably repeat as a state champion, or at least come pretty close to it. Yeah. And then once that's done, he'll take his OV to LSU, maybe another visit, and I think LSU's in a good spot from there.
Sammy, what kind of dog is that behind you? It looks like it should be on the cover of a Death Row album.
Well, I don't know which one was behind me.
Was it a
before.
Doberman?
I got two of them that keep rotating around me. I just try to make sure they don't do anything ridiculous behind me on camera.
Was it a Doberman?
I got two pits, a black pit and a gold pit.
Wow.
When's the album coming out?
Seriously.
Man, if I can ever get him to stay still for a picture for the album.
Sammy, one thing before we get you out of here. The balance of recruiting the state of Louisiana to the national. You mentioned that Jaden Rashada is in town, quarterback out of Pennsylvania. What is the balance that you see Kelly taking his approach with recruiting the state compared to reaching out beyond the border?
Yeah, that's a great question, and honestly, I don't think we have a full grasp just yet. Obviously, we'll see how the rest of this 2022 class plays out, or 2023 class, geez. with guys like Frank Wilson, there's going to be a heavy influence on the state, and in 2023, there's a lot of good pieces. LSU has half of them committed at this point, and they're still going after a lot of the good pieces in state. But listen, quarterback, it's a quarterback state in 2023, but if they don't get one of these top three guys, they're going to go out of state to either California or Michigan. Like that's very atypical. That's Brian Kelly and really also Brian Polian, who has national ties as, LSU's recruiting coordinator. I think when the situation arises to get a really good player from the state of Georgia or Florida or California, they're going to do that. But as long as Frank Wilson is the associate head coach and Joe Sloan is on that staff and Coach Hankton's on that staff, they're going to recruit the state of Louisiana first, and the same as Les Miles and Ed Orgeron, and they're going to recruit the surrounding territories. You know that obviously Houston and Dallas are major LSU alumni bases, and they've been kind to LSU in the past. The same with Mississippi and the Gulf Coast. But, LSU is always going to recruit Louisiana first. But I think Brian Kelly does bring a national flair. And talking to people who know a lot more than I do, he's using that reputation from Notre Dame and the national reputation that he has as a head coach, and he's going to use it at LSU. And there's no reason why he shouldn't, So I think we'll see how it balances out toward the end of this class. I would say, considering if you look at the transfer portal, the guys like Joe Fuchsia and Greg Brooks, those are Louisiana guys. Those are New Orleans kids. Yeah. So they're taking the Louisiana aspect into effect, and with Frank Wilson leading the charge, that's guaranteed. But there will be some national appeal, and we're going to see that this year, whether it's with quarterback or some of these other positions of note.
Last one, Sammy. Jay Chillen asks inside of the chat, what's going on with Jaden Asbury?
Jaden is coming off his OV to Auburn. That's a little bit too tough for this time of the morning, but he's going to head to Notre Dame and Michigan for OVs this month. I think he's going to kind of like Shelton. He's going to, U-High is going to make a run at a state championship, and Jaden is going to follow the same blueprint as his brother Austin. He's going to, go for a state championship and then maybe take one or two OVs at the end. People close to him think it'll come down to LSU and Alabama, maybe LSU and A&M. I'll say this, but before Austin signed with Auburn last year, I would have never thought that the Asburys were going to sign with LSU, and that was under the Ed Orgeron, staff. Not a knock on them, it just wasn't a match. With Frank Wilson, with Brian Kelly, with a lot of these with Coach House, who has taken a huge role in recruiting Jaden in particular, I think it's going to be LSU or Alabama in the end. Obviously Auburn has the family tie, but I just don't see it. I don't see Jaden going to Auburn at this point. They have a lot of ground to make up. I think ultimately he ends up at LSU or Alabama, and he's far from a decision, but those guys have more staying power now than they did under the previous regime.
Sam Spiegelman is a must-follow in the recruiting world if you're looking for the up-to-date information on what's going on with not only the Louisiana guys, but guys all over the country. Follow him on Twitter at Sam Spiegs. Read the information at On3 Recruiting. If you have not learned about On3 Recruiting, you've got to get over and check out the website, on3.com. Sammy will be checking it again soon, man. We will see you out at LSU this summer. Thank you, man.
Yep. Thanks for having me, guys. Be good.
You got it.